Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in, and down he goes again. Unbelievable! Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Episode 120 of the Last Round Podcast. Thanks again for joining us, guys. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Boxing Social, Stitcher, we're all over the place. I think we just got on Amazon's Audible or whatever their podcast platforms are. We're on iHeartRadio. We're all over the place. We appreciate it wherever you're listening around the world. This week, Mike is actually unable to make this week's episode. So my guest host is somebody hardcore boxing fans definitely know. Especially a lot of the people who don't read articles, but they watch all the YouTube content. He was probably one of the first initial, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were one of the first ones, if not the first one. I don't know the whole details, so if somebody's hating on me out there, I apologize, but I know for a fact you were one of the first ones to enter the YouTube market in the sport of boxing. Marcos Villegas of Fight Hub TV joins me this week as a guest host. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, it's kind of weird hearing people refer to me, and people have said this, like, oh, you're one of the godfathers of YouTube. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm young, dog. But yeah, I want to say, yeah, I was the first batch of people that got on YouTube and started doing all this 10 years ago. It's been crazy, to be honest.
Has it been 10 years already?
I think it's been more, actually. I think it's been 11 now. It has been 11. Yeah, so started with a dream, broke in a room, and now I'm on here on the podcast.
I know, right? Well, I definitely appreciate it. Mike appreciates you filling in for him this week. We definitely
he owes me donuts.
He does, man, and I'm sure he's listening to this right now. So, Mike, if as you're listening, get him a dozen donuts and send it to his house, man.
Send it over.
But, kind of jumping right into it, this past Friday, actually, from the H Arena in France. I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Yoka, but Tony Yoka remains undefeated with the 10-0 and with the 12th round TKO in the final round. He gets a TKO stoppage over Joe Tomboy. I forgot I mispronounce these names all the time. Mike always corrects me because these guys overseas have, a little bit different names most of the time. So Mike's always a good one on the enunciation part. Joel Jacob, I'll just say it like that. And this was for the vacant EBU heavyweight title. Yoka actually won a gold medal in the 2016 Olympics. And he was one of the rivals, I guess you could say, of Joe Joyce, who's coming off one of the biggest wins of his career earlier last year. Did you catch this fight? And if you did, what do you think about Tony Yoka's ceiling? He's a 6'7". He's listed as 6'7", fighting at heavyweight. I mean, what do you think? You think he's a player in the division?
I didn't see the fight. I'll be honest, but I am aware of Tony Yoka. I know Richard Schaefer had signed him a few years back to Ringstar, and he was very high on him. And even when I first saw of him in his fights, he had a few fights shown. I don't know what platform. I think maybe even the Ringstar YouTube that he had in France. He looked like he was very raw. It reminded me a lot of what Joshua was in his first 5-6 fights, where everybody was saying he was a little stiff. I don't want to say Yoka's robotic, but a little stiff, and he was a little green. In terms of his ceiling, you hear of a guy that's an Olympian, a gold medalist, and who's a heavyweight, and immediately your eyes perk. You're like, huh, okay. I wonder how good this guy is. We're looking at Joe Joyce, and Joe Joyce had, a lot of fanfare as well with his turn. And it's funny, coincidentally, I think Schaefer had signed him for a while. I don't know what happened with that. Where is Schaefer, actually? I haven't seen him.
I don't think you're the only one to ever ask that question in the last couple of years.
Now that I think of it, I haven't seen him very, very often. But it's very like a very similar not career trajectory, but I think questions that I think I had of Joyce, I have a Yoka. Obviously, he hasn't stepped up in competition yet. He's I don't want to say the safe route, but he's building, which is what they should be doing with a guy that, from I remember seeing maybe about a year and a half ago, I felt still needed a lot of work. Obviously, EBU is not a major sanctioning body title, so they're getting him the right fights to go ahead and build him up. But at some point, you're going to have to make a leap of faith, and it remains to be seen how soon that'll be. With Joyce, they I think they barely did it with Triple D in this last fight, because I think a lot of the criticism of Joyce was he seemed very slow, very robotic. And you ever play Marvel versus Capcom?
Yeah, I've played it in the past. Yeah. Played for PS3, I think.
Yeah, the first one that actually had the Juggernaut.
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Was slow but powerful. And that was what they'd say about Joe Joyce, which is funny. His nickname is the Juggernaut. So, we'll see. You just don't win a gold medal. So, he has the fundamentals. He has the pedigree there as well. So it remains to be seen, though. He has to step up, and I think he's a little bit older, right?
I think he's in his mid-20s, mid to late 20s. Mid to late 20s.
Yeah. He's in his prime right now. So I think they better put their foot on the gas in terms of moving him along. Even though I know COVID deterred a lot of people's careers for at least held them back for like a year or two.
So he mentioned after the fight that he feels he deserves a shot at a top 10 heavyweight.
Yeah, there you
go. There's obviously Joe Joyce is there. Chisora's out there and stuff like that. I mean, ideally, if you were the matchmaker, you had a say in his career in his next fight. He obviously wants a top 10 guy or somebody close to those rankings. Who's somebody that you can see him matched up with in the following fight?
Throw him in with Bermane Stiverne. Stiverne's former heavyweight champion. He's obviously not in his prime anymore. He just lost a fight, I believe, to on that Don King card. I forget who he fought. But yeah, throw him in there with Stiverne. I think Stiverne would maybe be a good test. If not, Joey DeJeco, I think would maybe be a good test. Frank Sanchez fought him at the Barclays Center. I want to say maybe about a year and a half ago. I think that could potentially be a good test.
You don't think Stiverne's over the hill, though? You think that's
why he should fight Stiverne?
More for the name on his resume? Is that what you're saying?
Well, because Stiverne was a former champion, right. And he even though you would think on the surface he's past his prime, he has experience, and let's see how he does with that's the job of a matchmaker is you can't throw your guy in with the Sharks right away. You've got to give him different looks little by little, different pieces of the puzzle put in there. So I think, even though Stiverne might not be top 10, he's top 20. I think compared to the guys that Yoka's fought in his whole career, that'd be the biggest step up in terms of experience.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean,
Stiverne, hey, I'm looking out for Yoka. No,
I
think that'd be a good test. It would show us where he's at, because if he goes 12 rounds with Stiverne and can't put him away, then that shows you something. That shows you where he's at.
Right. I can see that. It's not that I don't understand your point, but I think what you mentioned earlier, how he's obviously he's in mid to late 20s. So it's not like he's in his early 20s, like, some of these other guys, like, Dynamite Dubois or any of these guys. So, based on that, like you said, like, I feel maybe he should kind of step on the gas a little bit. But I could also see your point that Stiverne is a former world champ. As your hypothetical job as a matchmaker, you kind of want to keep him on a path like that. If he goes 12 rounds with somebody like Stiverne or anything, it's a good measuring stick.
Yeah, start throwing him against opponents that, like, these other heavyweights in the top 5 have already beaten. Wilder, Duhopis, there was the other guy that the Polish guy that everyone thought he killed in the ring with that knockout. What was that guy's name? This bald Polish guy is Spilka.
Artur Spilka.
Throw him one of those guys. Let's see how he does little by little.
Well, Tony Yoka actually 2 fights ago, stopped Duapas, Johan Duapas.
Well, there you go. Look at that. It shows me how much I know. Shoot.
Well, no, but actually, that just talks about that just speaks to your mind as, being in the boxing game. If you mention that as a name, obviously the matchmaker was obviously thinking similarly. So
that's how they think. They want to get opponents that these world champions on their way up put out, to just kind of get like a measuring stick as to where they're at this current stage of their development. But also you want to put these guys in there with guys that have faced world champions and have gone a good amount of rounds with these dangerous world champions to show you really where these guys are in their development, but also too, like what kind of heart they have in there, because they're going to make it tough for these guys.
Yeah. I hope he's the real deal. Like you said, you don't just win a gold medal in the Olympics by accident,
No,
obviously.
not at all.
So, I hope that so far he's undefeated. So far he's winning, and the heavyweight division's the best talent pool we've seen in years. At least since Joshua beat Klitschko and Klitschko retired and all that stuff. So, more players in that division isn't going to hurt. It's just going to create more excitement and more action. So I hope he continues and his ceiling just gets higher and higher, because it's just going to make everything more exciting. Also, this past Friday, rare Friday pay-per-view, female pay-per-view headlined by the GWO, the self-proclaimed the GWO. And I'm sure some people are going to get pissed off because I said self-proclaimed, but she does say it. Clarissa Shields remains undefeated with a 10-round unanimous decision win over Marie-Eve Dicaire, or is it Dicaire?
I think it's, I don't know. If you're saying it with a French pronunciation,
right?
Dicaire.
Yeah, that's what I
heard Ray Flores, the ring announcer, say Dicaire. I think Dicaire.
Yeah, I heard different pronunciations, so I wasn't sure which one it was.
Usually the ring announcers, they go in the back and they ask them just to make sure, like, how the fighters wanted to say. So I think it is Dicaire.
Right. So Shields, actually, now she's undisputed. She unified the WBC, IBF, WBO, and WBA super welterweight titles. This was history, at least for the female side of boxing. Like I mentioned, I think it was, I don't know if it was the first time or the first time in several years that women headlined their first pay-per-view card. I saw some type of stat, and I apologize if I'm misremembering that, but this was on pay-per-view. Let's just start right there on the whole pay-per-view side. Obviously, there was a lot of criticism. There's still a lot of criticism why it was on pay-per-view. When you heard that this fight was going to be on pay-per-view, it was on Fight TV actually for $29.99. What was your initial reaction for a bout like this?
Okay, I'll be really, really honest here. My first initial reaction was why, but then my second, and this is my honest reaction, was she has the balls to do something like that. I'm going to support her, and I ended up buying the pay-per-view because I respect people that are willing to go out on a limb and take risk and do bold shit. And that's what she's done. And she's taken a risk and she's putting herself out there knowing that there was going to be a lot of criticism, a lot of
critics.
Critics thrown back at her, and she went ahead and did her thing. Now, we obviously don't know the buys. Don't know how well it did. I bought it, but I'm going to be really, really honest. And I'm probably going to get so much just crap, man, because, I wanted to make a point of buying it just to show her support. But I don't know if man. So I do this full time. I'm ingrained in boxing, and sometimes it gets so overwhelming that I just need to check out.
Right.
And it just so happened that was a heavy content week for me, and I just needed to check out, and I completely checked out that weekend, and I missed the fight.
Wow. No way.
I didn't watch the fight because I didn't want to do anything with boxing at all. I'd been grinding already since the Sunday before, just churning out interviews, and it just kept coming in. And then the Canelo fight stuff, it was just like I needed a freaking break. you
Right.
know, and I chose that Friday. So I went and ordered it, but I didn't get a chance to see it. I hear that she stopped her, and people are saying, why doesn't she go to 147 to fight the winner of McCASKILL and Cecilia Brackus? Am I saying that right? Brackus. People call her Bakus, which is
Yeah. There's different pronunciations for that too.
I have no idea how she would be able to make 147.
No, I don't think she can make it.
She's too muscular.
Right.
She's a very built woman. How? I have no idea. No idea how she can make 154. But yeah, that was my honest reaction. You know, I think, you know, people expected it not to do well, you know, but I think she should be commended for that. And her promoter should be commended for that, because it wasn't their plan to go on pay-per-view. You know,
Right.
they had to go that route because Showtime pretty much dumped them to the side, you know, had
Right.
promised them dates and they didn't come through, and no one would show her or was giving her dates. No other network. So, you know, they had to go that route, and they took a risk.
Right. And then for that fight, actually, Shields actually landed 28% of her punches, 116 out of 409, while Dakari, I apologize to our French audience. However, I mispronounced that. I apologize. Landed only 12%. So Shields actually more than doubled her. She only landed 31 of 263. So I think realistically, I know we talked we previewed this fight on last week's episode. Shields, ever since she's turned pro, she's dominated every opponent she's been in front of. So, you know, if you want to say best pound for pound female fighter, I don't think you can argue that. I think that's true, right?
Disputed in 2 weight classes. Like, who? Yeah, I understand the death of competition, but like, it is what it is, you know. Like, no other female has done that at this point actively in 2 weight classes. So, you know, you got to give her props. She has to be, you know, number 1 active right now. Yeah, I you know, Katie Taylor, but Katie Taylor isn't undisputed in 2 weight classes,
right?
You know?
And they're obviously, you know, because I saw
and then her fights, people think she lost her last 2 fights.
That's true.
You know,
that's true.
So,
I've seen some Twitter. You know, obviously we know about how boxing Twitter is, how it can be, and the hole you can kind of dive into on boxing Twitter. But I saw some
boxing Twitter sucks for reals.
But
this is negativity, dog? Like, and here's the thing: boxing is a sport that it's highly negative. It's negative. People are used to it. It's because when you join boxing Twitter or you get involved, you see all the other guys always be negative, criticize. So you think, oh, well, this is how it is. And then they're negative. No one supports anybody, really, to be honest, you know? Like, I try to stay away from Twitter now, bro. It'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, I could see that. But don't you think it's like a necessary evil, though, for the sport?
No.
Really?
No. Okay. So I think the obviously criticism is warranted when you buy a product, when you purchase a product, when you're viewing a product. So, you know, obviously some of the criticism in terms of the matches are fine, are warranted, because we should voice our criticisms towards some of these fights that are being made, because ultimately they're putting stuff on pay-per-view that isn't pay-per-view worthy, but, you know, the way we let them know is not buying the pay-per-view.
Right.
You know, the way we let them know is not watching the fight because we don't like that fight. The way we let them know is by doing that. Now, the constant just bash on Twitter, it's just like, come on. I don't know. Just me in general, I don't like being around that sort of negativity, because it's just like, it's like, all I see is just bad. You're never like praising anything. And it's like, well, what the, like, you know?
Right.
It becomes like that sort of thing, you know? And I don't like that, you know? Like the older I've gotten, the more I just want to be supportive of people and what they're doing, and try to see the other side, the struggle of what people are going through. And I think in general, we need that just more from people, to support people that are trying to be bold and doing big-ish. And yeah, you know, every once in a while, it's good, I guess, to let off some steam. But I think boxing Twitter as a whole just overdoes it.
So some people were talking about Savannah Marshall.
Yes.
So what do you think about that fight, because their names have been kind of parallel, especially the last couple fights, that maybe
I don't think anybody, and honestly, like no one's going to be able to challenge Clarissa at this point. Like, let's be truthful, like no one's going to be able to touch her.
I agree with you, but Mike, obviously the guy you're filling in with, my co-host,
yes,
he thinks Marshall can beat her. He does.
Why does he say that?
Well, I mean, we haven't really dived into it because I remember when he had talked about it, he was
I'd be real curious to see like why he feels that way, because at this point, like I honestly don't see anybody really touching Clarissa, just how good she is. And she's just at a higher, it's just her pedigree and the time that she spent practicing her craft. But you know what? She is doing MMA, coming this year. And let's see what happens, because that's a lot harder of a challenge for her. And if by chance she gets cracked in an MMA fight and things go downhill there, let's see how that trickles down into her boxing career, because as we've seen, it's not an easy transition to go from boxing into MMA.
Right. I mean, do you see her once in MMA, maybe staying in MMA, or kind of going back and forth like a Heather Hardy does?
I don't know how she would be able to consistently go back and forth, because MMA training is they're always hurt. I think they're even more hurt than boxers. Like the training is day in, day out, just a brutal grind on your body, and it just wears on you. So I don't see it. I don't know. She says she is. She says she's Superwoman. At this point, she seems like she's a Superwoman. Maybe she's the exception. Maybe she can. But from what I know, from me personally training in MMA a lot of my life, and then seeing how hurt those guys are, how prevalent injuries are in MMA training, and how difficult it is, I think, in my humble opinion, which probably doesn't mean much, but I don't know how she consistently could keep that up, and I think it could get to a point where she makes a decision based on monetary reasons to see, hey, which one of these endeavors is paying me more, and she'll stick with that. And for what we've seen, the women in MMA are more appreciated. They're marketed better. They're embraced more by the MMA community, and they're paid better in MMA. So it would not be surprising to me at all if she leaves boxing and goes into MMA a la Holly Holm.
Do you think, obviously the two biggest companies in the world for MMA are Bellator and the UFC. I mean, could you see one or the other offering her some type of deal?
If she does well with the PFL,
right.
I think, I don't know how many fights she has on contract with PFL, but yeah, if she does well with PFL, it's a no-brainer. The thing is, what weight class would she fight? I think the UFC, I'm not sure what their highest women's division is. I don't know if they have a 155. I know Bellator does, but the UFC, I think they only go up to 145. I believe that's the weight class that Amanda Nunes is dominating.
Right.
Clarissa's a big, strong woman, so either the UFC would have to incorporate a weight class, or then, if that's the case, it's Bellator. It's Bellator.
Right.
They have I think a higher weight class than 145. I believe so.
Right. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how her career progresses now that she's going into the PFL, and that's something pretty pretty common that we've been seeing.
I'm really interested to see. They're going to match her up, obviously, well in the PFL, but it's going to get to a point where she's going to face somebody that's going to go right to taking her down, clinching, working their ground game, and that's going to be really interesting to see how much she really has soaked up everything, working with Greg Jackson and Winklejohn over there in New Mexico.
Right. Absolutely. You mentioned how you did support the fight by buying it. You just didn't, you wanted to tune out from the sport for a little bit. I think
don't rub it in, bro.
Well, no. Well, I'm just saying, at least you support it with your wallet, which is the most important thing, right?
Yeah, no. Like I said, I understand. I was, I don't know. I just have a soft spot for people that are attempting to do entrepreneurial type stuff or taking risks like that. And I think, we we as people should support people that are at least trying to do something great or something different, because at the end of the day, at least they tried. You know,
Right.
that's a lot better than what we're doing, which is nothing.
Well, because I wanted to mention that again because Shakur Stevenson, who is, I would say, I would categorize him as one of the good friends of Clarissa Shields. They were in the Olympics together. They came up together. I don't know if you saw, he actually deleted the tweet, but he tweeted about an hour or so before the event started, or maybe before the main event. He tweeted who has a link for the fight, and he started getting a bunch of crap for it. Be like, aren't you his friend? Like, you know, how much?
Aren't you rich?
Yeah,
Also.
and then he ended up deleting it. But
but we all know as boxing fans, we don't like paying for stuff. You know?
right. But I mean, like, I thought it was pretty funny.
I would have thought too, because I think they share the same publicist also. So the publicist had to have like just been like, what the heck are you doing? You know, like,
yeah.
And yeah, obviously as a friend, I would expect that to be a no-brainer, but that's actually kind of comical. But that touches on, in general, like the boxing fan, we don't like paying for stuff that we don't deem as worth the money. But also too, I think a majority of the boxing fans are very working class. You know, they're not of the highest tax bracket. Historically, it has never been. They're working men and women and everything. And hey, man, it's tough times right now, man. People are having to budget and penny pinch right now.
Do you think?
But not Shakur Stevenson. He's not penny pinching for sure.
Well, I mean, that if he's asking for a link, I mean, what is Top Rank really paying him over there? You know,
no, he just doesn't want to pay. he's doing well.
One final thought or one final question for you, Marcos, as we move on from this topic. Do you think this, like I mentioned earlier, this event was priced at $29.99, $30? Do you think that was the right price point for an event like this?
I think so. $30. It says $30. You know, that's not a lot. If you go to a bar, that gets you maybe 2 drinks.
Right.
You know, if you really want to get behind, like as a fan, if you're a fan of a fighter, okay, say you're you know, because she does have a lot of supporters. When we've posted clips of Clarissa, I'm surprised by the amount of support she has from her core fan group. If you're a supporter of something, $30 is not a lot when you compare it to $70 pay-per-views, $80 pay-per-views, $100 pay-per-views. It's not a lot, especially if you're you know, like I said, if you're like 110% behind a personality or a fighter like that. So I think I wish all the pay-per-views were priced like that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. I mean, I think even though it was also kind of an event, I think the whole Tyson Jones one was at $49.99. I mean, look at how much.
Yeah, let's drop the pay-per-views to $49.99. The thing is, they don't. I talked to Steven Espinosa about this Showtime.
Right.
Like, you guys were like, people are penny pinching right now. Like, why are you guys charging $70 for pay-per-views?
Mm-hmm.
You guys should lower the price to $49.99.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's a good level ground. And he said, pretty much, we don't want to risk that. Not we, but he said, I don't think anybody wants to risk lowering the price of pay-per-view and getting the same amount of buys we would get if we didn't lower the price of pay-per-view.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see his concern behind that.
Now we're cutting on the buy. Now we're making less revenue and getting the same amount of buys.
Yeah, I could see his concerns, but I mean, you know, that's what they pay him for, to have that business acumen like that. So whether you like it or you hate it, I mean, that's what
he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. You know, he knows. He's been there at Showtime a lot longer than what people thought he would be. Because I remember in the beginning when he got hired, people were like, "This guy's Golden Boy's lawyer. What is he doing?" In this
he was Golden Boy's lawyer.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people.
He's come.
That's what a lot of people don't realize about Steven Espinosa, because he's been at Showtime for quite a few years now, quite several years actually. But a lot of people who I've talked to over the years are surprised that he was actually Golden Boy's lawyer. They're like, oh, wow, because, you know, he works with Floyd and PBC now. And, you know, there's kind of the animosity between the promoters and the networks and stuff. But he started with De La Hoya. You know, that's where he made his name.
Yeah, he's Golden Boy's lawyer. And, yeah, he's done good. He's done good for the most part. I think Showtime's given us pretty good fights. There's been stinkers here and there, but I think for the most part they've done well with what they've offered the boxing fan.
And speaking of Showtime, this upcoming Saturday, the 13th of March, from the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut on Showtime, the undefeated David Benavidez, 23-0, goes up against Ronald Ellis, 18-1-2. Benavidez is obviously, considered, at least by many, as one of the best fighters at 168. His name is being mentioned a lot more consistently with Canelo, since Canelo's been at that weight class. I think, to me, he's the real deal. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And this is what lets you know that he's the real deal. It's when the trainers in boxing say that, they hold him in high regard, high esteem. And I've talked to the trainers, I've talked to retired fighters, and they all tell me, like, no, like, this kid is legit. Like, this kid is for real. If he just stays focused, doesn't get in trouble, stays the middle ground, he can go far, and he can maybe be the one that is able to beat Canelo in the future. It's just, you could tell, like, they always say, like, the eye test, but like when you see someone and then you think, wow, that's not normal. I don't normally see that from a boxer. They are not doing this to the opponents, like, especially like this young. Like, he's already overachieved. He became the youngest world champion for a time. I think at 21, I believe. Already 2 times, obviously, because once he got stripped with the little drug mishap that he had, and then the second one was his last fight where he lost it on the scales, unfortunately. But I think he is. And I think eventually he will end up getting a big fight. I don't know if Canelo will still be around at that point. But I think he's developing into the real deal, and someone who's had that much. He didn't have an amateur career.
Right.
But his amateur career was sparring freaking guys like Golovkin and all these guys at the wild card. And it's just like, I think that's just as good, for him, because he was getting sparring with world champions that were killers in their prime when he was like a kid at 17, 18, along with his older brother.
I mean, like you said, he's kind of like his own worst enemy at the moment. He got stripped of his WBC title a couple years ago for his drug mishap. And then he lost the belt on the scale subsequent to that. I don't want to label him, at least, even though it's been 2 times with issues like that. I don't want to categorize him that he's going to be maybe like a Broner or something in terms of like behaviors like that. But I mean, can you see that as like a consistency going forward for him, that that he experiences issues like that? Like, because if it does, I mean, like we said, he's talented, but he's his own worst enemy at the moment.
He's still very young. He's still 21, 22. So I think it's too early to tell if that is going to be a theme with him throughout. I think it's too early to tell. He's in Big Bear. He's been focused. His dad takes him to Big Bear to keep him, disciplined and focused. I think as long as his dad's keeping tabs on him and they put him in a place away from distraction. He just became a dad too, so you got to factor that in. That maybe that's going to help tremendously in terms of his focus as well. So I think it's too early to really tell, and he's still very, very young. And look, when we've all messed up when we're young, and he said the prior mishap with not making weight was because of COVID, that they just weren't prepared to cut the weight, if that's true or not, or if he didn't put in the work during the camp. Who knows? He looks way better now, in better shape now than the photos from that last camp.
Right.
So it remains to be seen.
Yeah. And his opponent, Ellis, he's a native of Lynn, Massachusetts, and he's fresh off a win over 3-time world title challenger Matt Korobov, who Korobov was actually forced to retire due to an injury during their fight on Showtime. So this is his second fight on Showtime. or at least since that one, at least. Ellis has actually been calling. Ellis, obviously, he's a lesser known name than Benavidez at this point, but Ellis has been calling for a big fight, a bigger name between 160 and 168. I think he's mentioned that he can make either one. I think he has it. He has one of the biggest players within those weight classes. Do you think there's any chance he rises to the occasion this weekend and maybe shows some grit and maybe wins more rounds than people think, or even maybe wins the fight, which is obviously he's the underdog, but what do you think?
Well, Durrell was doing really well against Benavidez until he got stopped. So I think in the Durrell fight, it showed that you can outbox David. The question is, your conditioning has to be 210% because David is a pressure guy. He's going to look to wear you down and break you going into the fight. So, I think Ellis will win some rounds. Obviously, you got to base your plan on what you've seen work on your opponent before, and they're going to probably look at the Durrell fight and be like, hey, Benavidez can be outboxed, and you just got to see if the conditioning holds up. Now, if he's going to win, I think that's a tall order. Korobov, though, is a very I have him in high regards. I felt that he beat Charlo that night in Brooklyn 2 years ago. But obviously, a little bit older now, he's Korobov. So that shows you, though, because Korobov is no joke, very accomplished amateur as well. So we'll see, but it's hard to bet against David right now because he's 21, 22 in his prime, and pressure guys at that young, he's just relentless. This guy's just relentless. He's an animal in there. So let's hope for a competitive fight. Let's not hope for a blow. I think it'll be a competitive fight.
You mentioned Korobov. How you mentioned he beat Charlo, and there's a lot of people, especially after that fight, who felt he deserved the W. Were you at that time? Did you score that fight for PBC as the unofficial scorer?
No, I didn't. I think that was one of the first Fox fights, and they had the Larry Hazard, who is the Atlantic City State Commissioner, New Jersey State Commissioner. He scored that fight, but I was ringside for that fight, and I remember everybody with Fox asked me to get a second opinion, and I'm like, Korobov won that fight. Korobov won the fight. I'm like, the results should have been flip-flopped. Mm-hmm. Jermell should have gotten the decision with Harrison, and Korobov should have gotten the decision with Jermall. So I just felt that night he had a better night than Jermall, and he to me landed the better punches, and he outboxed Jermall at that point.
And then we're rounding off the whole Benavidez topic here, assuming he wins, as he is the heavy favorite going into this weekend against Ellis. Who's a hypothetical matchup for him next? Maybe like a Callum Smith or something like that.
I know this fight is a eliminator, a WBC eliminator, and Durrell, I think, just actually fought in another WBC eliminator. And when I talked to David last week, he told me that there's a possibility that he might have to rematch Durrell again, which I'm like, dude, what's the point of that? You just stop this guy. Like, why is there a rematch? He's like, well, it's an eliminator, and the winner is the number one mandated to fight Canelo. I'm like, but you stop this guy. And he's like, yeah, but that's politics for you. That's how the WBC works. So it could maybe be that we see another Durrell. If not, I hope this push for a Jermall Charlo fight happens, but I heard that Jermall has said that he's not moving up to 168 pounds. So
right.
If that's not the case, then I think a Callum Smith fight would probably make sense because it's looking like Caleb Plant is going to fight Canelo in September.
Yeah, that seems like it's what's going to happen. I mean, we'll see. Assuming Canelo gets past Billy Joe Saunders in May, that is the rumor that Caleb Plant in September. Caleb Plant or either a third match with Triple G are the two.
No, it's going to be Caleb Plant. It's going to that throws Canelo's whole plan out the window.
Undisputed.
Yeah,
right.
Because if he doesn't fight Caleb's gonna I highly doubt Caleb's going to wait till December for another fight. So it throws a lot of things off. And I don't know. I saw a tweet saying that Eddie Hearn and BBC and Fox both have deals in place already for Caleb to either whichever offers better for him to go to DAZN or for him to have a BBC on Fox pay-per-view with Canelo. So I'm thinking that looks the most likely. I think.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. So, but Benavidez, like I mentioned, is a heavy favorite. So, assuming he wins, I agree with you. I don't know why he would have an eliminator with Durrell, but like he mentioned, at least he acknowledges the boxing politics within the sport. Especially with somebody like Canelo holding that title for that specific division. Canelo has the power. So, we'll see how
I don't know. Maybe they'll make him franchise champion at 168.
Don't
franchise champ.
Don't say that because you're gonna speak it into existence, man.
Oh man, imagine.
You know what?
So Canelo wins. Say Canelo wins undisputed. All right, Caleb Plant, and then Benavidez is mandated, and then Canelo, not Canelo, but the WBC gives Canelo like, you know what? You can do what you want, man. You're franchise now. David goes and fights somebody to be WBC, and it's just like, here we go again.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Here we go, the Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez situation all over again.
Yeah, exactly. And throw Devin Haney in there too, since he got the belt right after that too.
Yeah, I know, right?
But also this upcoming weekend, another exciting. Well, actually, this is probably most exciting. This should be the most exciting main event of the weekend from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas on DAZN. Juan Francisco Estrada, 41-3, goes up against Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, 50-2. And this is for the WBC, WBA, and Ring Magazine super flyweight titles. These guys aren't strangers to each other. They know each other really well. Tell me your reaction to this matchup and what do you think is going to happen?
Man, this is a tough one because to me, I don't know if Roman is back because I didn't really have Yafai in high regards. I thought he was super overrated, to be honest, Mm-hmm. So it's hard. And Gallo Estrada has been more consistent with his performances, given the last few fights that he's had compared to Roman. Even though it seems that Roman's in a good place, he's been very, very disciplined. I don't know. This is a 50-50 fight. If you had to go by just how the guys have looked in their last few fights, maybe a slight nudge towards Gallo. But who knows? Honestly, who knows? Because if Roman's back like he was before, then that throws a whole new thing in there, as well. And we don't know how much COVID affected Gallo. Because he did get it. That's why the fight was originally pushed from, I want to say like October to now. Mm-hmm. So we don't know if it's going to have lingering effects. Like I'm hearing that it affected Burchell in that fight with Valdez, like that it really affected him, so that's another thing that I'm thinking like, well, let's see what happens here.
So Estrada and Chocolatito first met in November of 2012 out here in Los Angeles in the Southern California area. And Chocolatito actually came out on top when he successfully defended his WBA light flyweight title at the time via unanimous decision. 8 years later, rematch. Dang. Can we see the same sparks and fireworks from that first matchup?
8 years later, I think so. These guys are going to go at it. There's no way that they're not going to go ahead and go to exchange with each other. Just seeing how their styles, they both complement each other. This is gonna be a great fight. It'll probably be, we hope, but I think good certainty that there'll be a good amount of action in this fight. It could be a fight of the year, and we could end up seeing a trilogy fight based on what happens in this fight.
Financially, from a financial perspective, who, assuming one or the other gets to win, obviously, who has the potential to make the most money going forward based on their name and their resume and their fights?
You know what? That's a little hard, actually, because they're not in a division that's seen as a glamour or a money division.
Right.
Know?
That's why I asked it.
So yeah, that's tough. I would think maybe Gallo, because there's a lot of Mexican Americans here in the United States that he could appeal to, and that he could go here, and if they push him right, he could sell out where those fans would go. Roman does real well in California because there's a big Nicaraguan population out here in Southern California. I don't know how well he did in New York because they put him on a Golovkin card, but you would think because of that, because Gallo has two fan bases, and obviously Mexico, they love boxing.
Right.
He does well over there also. That the money guy, the most potential there would be, in my opinion, Gallo Estrada.
I think it's a 50-50. I think it's kind of tough, but I think I agree with you with Estrada of having
because look, the Mexicans are going to back Gallo.
Right. Yeah.
And if he wins, they're going to back him even more. And I think just Roman is not the most marketable guy because he's so humble and soft spoken, which I think is totally cool. You know, but that doesn't sell.
Right.
That doesn't sell a big amount of tickets. People like out there personalities, and not to say that Gallo is not the most like out there charismatic guy either. He's not, but Roman's an introvert. He keeps to himself. He does his talking in the ring. But I think just because you have two markets here for Gallo here in the United States and here in Mexico, I think he has a bigger potential just because of the demographics of here in the U.S. and in of course Mexico.
Absolutely. Also on the card, Hiroto Kayoguchi, 14-0, goes up against Axel Aragon Vega for the WBA light flyweight title. So another flyweight matchup. This looks to be the co-main event. And then a female rematch from earlier last year on DAZN, Jessica McCaskill, who is currently the unified, actually. I think she is undisputed. She's undisputed. I'm sorry. Undisputed.
Undisputed at welterweight.
It's currently the undisputed WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO, and IBO welterweight champion. Rematch, like you mentioned, against Cecilia Braykhus, who just suffered her first loss against McCaskill last year. Do you think it ends the same this time again?
I don't know. It's hard. How old is Cecilia?
37? She's in her late 30s, I believe.
Yeah, she still looks fine as one, but she's getting up there.
Yeah,
it's a young person's sport. Any sport is a young person's sport, but especially in boxing and MMA. That's a tough one. I honestly don't know. That's gonna be one where we'll see whoever is able to adjust and whoever is able to implement their plan that night. But if you're basing it on just father time, you got to favor the younger athlete in McCASKILL.
Do you think somebody like DAZN, since they have been putting on matchups with Cecilia Braykhus, would kind of secretly want her to get the belts back, so maybe a future bout with like a Shields can happen?
I don't know. I remember I heard Dana White one time say that him as a promoter, he doesn't really root for guys to win because it's burned him in the past where he gets too involved, and it's just like the emotional toll. And I think that's a smart approach. But obviously, network executives, they have an interest in their person to win. But I don't know. You'd have to look at the contracts and see if there is an option there on McCASKILL if she does win, that DAZN gets the right to her next fight if she's able to win. But obviously that's a big fight. I think DAZN has been a big proponent of women's boxing. Especially with what Eddie Hearn has done with Katie Taylor and the females that he signed over there as well. So if Cecilia wins, That'd be really interesting because I have no idea how Clarissa makes 147 pounds. Oh my! It's just how do you do?
Yeah,
Jeez,
exactly.
she's able to be undisputed in 3 divisions. Game over, man. Like that. That's
For
no
sure.
one's ever going to match that accomplishment, like a woman, like ever, woman or man. You know, and yeah, I understand. And apples and oranges in terms of the depth of competition, but
it's still an accomplishment regardless.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. Rounding off that card, Houston's Austin Ammo Williams 7-0 goes up against Dennis Dolan.
That's a big step up. Mama's boy. That's a really when I saw that fight get announced, I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big step up. Ammo is a powerful guy, but Dennis is a very crafty guy, has a lot of experience.
Do you think it's too dangerous at this point as a matchmaker?
I don't know. I'd like to pick the matchmaker's brain on that, to be honest. I was surprised by that because Ammo's still, I don't know, maybe they feel that, Ammo's at a point where that they got to really, unless Ammo asks for it, Ammo's like, yo, I'm ready, At the end of the day, it could come down to that too. You're obviously these guys work for the fighters, and you as management, if you're telling them like, nah, chill, like we want this fight, and the guy goes, no, you work for me, I want this fight. You got to do what he tells you. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to use his experience in there, and it could be a thing too that his style, they feel the team. Ammo's team, it perfectly matches up because of how heavy-handed he is, and at some point they're going to crack him.
You mentioned Dennis, has been in there with pretty significant names, names such as George Groves, Anthony Durrell, David Benavidez, somebody we just talked about earlier, Jamel Charlo. Just having those names on your resume, even if he was on the losing end, I think nobody can deny that it still gives you some type of experience. You're still able to walk away with some type of experience when being in the ring with talent like that. So I agree. I think this is definitely a very intriguing fight for Ammo Williams. If he rises to the occasion and wins, especially if he's able to stop him, that's obviously the best outcome that can happen for him and his team. But, is it realistic that he could actually win with somebody with this type of experience?
Oh yeah, dude, this guy's a tremendous puncher.
Right.
He cracks him. Well, let's see how good of a chin Douglas still has, but yeah, this guy's a big puncher. And I think it'll say a lot about him if he's able to get him out of there in spectacular fashion. But it also with Douglas, he's gonna make you on your money, man. He's gonna give you a hard night, and maybe that's what they want in this fight for the growth of Ammo, is someone to really challenge him, really, push him, bring the best out of him, and challenge him.
Right. Absolutely. And then rounding off the show at the news and notes section, Joe Smith Jr. and Maxim Vlasov, I hope I pronounced that right. Their title fight is being rescheduled for April 10th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Joe Smith Jr. Obviously, people might remember his name. Obviously, he's a big name in the division at 175 pounds at the moment. But he really jumped onto the scene when he knocked out Bernard Hopkins out here in Inglewood, California, out of the ring.
Were you there?
I was. Yeah, I was
there too. That was crazy.
So knocked him out of the ring. I think that moment really garnered attention. It was already a lot of attention on it because it was Bernard Hopkins' last fight, but that definitely gained a lot of mainstream attention because a lot of mainstream outlets picked it up because of that interesting out of the ring knockout. What do you think about this matchup on April 10th?
I don't know anything about Vaslov or however you pronounce his name, to be honest. I'm just hoping that Joe wins and we see him against Beterbiev. That's all I'm hoping for, because that's a tremendous fight between Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr., both huge knockout punchers. I know Maxim is a very accomplished amateur, but that's all I really know. I've never seen him fight, to be honest. I don't know the type of style that he brings into the ring. So, I would defer that to you, man. What do you think?
I mean, Beterbiev is a monster. I think it is an exciting fight if Smith wins this upcoming fight in April, and goes up against like an Artur Beterbiev. But I think Beterbiev is he's a different animal, man. Especially at that weight class. They've mentioned, Canelo's even mentioned, I think his team saying at one point last year that they were considering Beterbiev.
Yeah,
and
they weren't.
I think they just said that as like smoke and mirrors. But
dude, I asked Eddie that question that Tuesday. I'm like, would you guys fight Beterbiev? He's like, oh yeah, we would. And then I asked Oscar like 2 days later, and he's like, no, this is a one and done. Like he's gonna go back down to 168. Like he's not a light heavyweight. And I'm like, I get it. Like you're in that situation. You don't want to make your guy look bad.
Right.
Like they're wussing out on something. And honestly, I think Canelo would fight a Beterbiev, if he wins, I don't know. Maybe Canelo could be Beterbiev. I'd like to think that he probably would make Beterbiev miss a lot. Thing is, when he doesn't miss, how are those punches going to affect a Canelo that's a lot smaller than a Beterbiev? And if he could sustain that pressure. The other thing is, we don't know if Beterbiev will be able to take a Canelo's punches either as well, So I think, actually Canelo, he could surprise people with a Beterbiev fight. Obviously, everybody thinks Beterbiev would just steamroll over Canelo, but Beterbiev's slow. Yes, he's powerful, but he's slow. And you got to think Canelo, that's a good advantage for Canelo, but we're not talking about Canelo versus Beterbiev. We're talking about Joe Smith and Beterbiev and Vlasov.
Vlasov, yeah. Either way, I like Smith Jr. I've been a fan of him for quite a few years now.
I like him too.
I like the whole, how I think he has a tree trimming service with his dad or something like that. So
yeah, I want to do an interview with Joe Smith in a treehouse, one of his tree houses.
Hey man, I think you can make that happen. I think you can make that happen.
That'd be hilarious.
Definitely have your multiple camera angles for that, man. Virtual reality or something like that. But obviously moving on to another news and notes section. Joshua Buatsi actually just announced that he has linked up with Virgil Hunter, who trains out over here at the Bay Area in California. What do you think about this pairing?
I have Virgil at very high regards. I think he's an excellent trainer, really, really good. So I think it's going to do well for him. Thing is how well he meshes with Virgil. It takes a while to kind of find your groove with your trainer as well. And from that point, I guess we could really see how it is. But, if I was managing fighters or if a fighter had asked me like, hey, what do you think about Virgil as a trainer? I'd be like, dude, that's an excellent choice. If you're looking to really learn about hit and not get hit and put in, good technical game plans and really hone in on your technique, he's one of the better ones, one of the best ones in that department. So yeah, I think that's a really good choice, not only for him, but any fighter that goes and links up with Virgil.
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting move, and I think it'll help Buatsi, especially because I'm assuming he's going to come over here to the States, to California to train. Kind of get
no way Virgil's going to go.
Yeah. I don't think he would go over there, at least not like, on a permanent or temporary permanent basis, if that makes sense. But I think it's going to be good for both parties involved. So I definitely think it's a good move for his career moving forward. So we'll see how it turns out. And also recently announced Gary Russell Jr. Goes up, is reported at least by the WBC to have a matchup against Ray Vargas for the WBC featherweight title.
That's his once a year defense.
This is actually, Ray Vargas he's not a slouch. I mean,
no, I'm talking about Gary Russell.
No, yeah, right. But I mean, like every time we see Gary Russell, it's not really. I feel, at least in my opinion, that Ray Vargas, even if this is a once a year, which it probably is for Gary Russell, like we're used to, Ray Vargas is a good name to be that once a year at this point.
He's Ray's undefeated,
right?
So I think 30 something, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and he's tall.
And he has he doesn't, I guess a lot of criticism about Ray is he has a very boring style. He's a very, doesn't fight like a typical pressure fighter. And, he has a long reach and he's tall. You know what? Let's see how Gary's able to adjust to this fight. But it did surprise me. That kind of came out of left field because wasn't Gary saying that there was a contract that by this time he'd fight Devin Haney or something like that, like in a year's time or something? He's going back and forth with Devin Haney, like he's going back and forth with Terrence Crawford. I was really hoping him and Terrence Crawford would actually fight.
Oh, that was never going to happen. You really thought that was realistic? That was never going to happen.
Well, I don't know. For a second, I thought maybe it would be. Like maybe it was something where like it was so personal that they'd be like, you know what, F it, let's go. And like Terrence, like, dude, well, I need an opponent. Like like a lot of people would have gotten maybe behind it. Yeah, I understand. It's a featherweight going up to fight a welterweight, but man, the beef was real there.
It was. But for the once a year we see Gary Russell here,
and that's a shame for Gary Russell because I feel that we've missed out on a lot of potential fights with him, and I haven't talked to him. I don't know if it's by his choosing or if it's because, there's only so many dates with PBC and he can't get any or people are passing on fights with him. But I think for boxing fans, it's like, it's a shame. And he probably doesn't because he's getting paid well.
Right.
He's winning. But, I would think maybe you'd wonder like, hey, could I have gotten more out of my prime?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I'm sure if this keeps going, eventually as he gets older and retires, and I'm sure he'll look back at it and be like, man, I should have just did it. But he's making money and that's
all that matters.
He's taking care of himself and his family. So
at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
And then you mentioned Devin Haney. Devin Haney is actually reported to fight. I don't know if it's official or not, but I believe it's essentially official as reported to fight Jorge Linares. I think it's likely official. And then one thing that kind of stole the thunder from that matchup, I like the matchup, but one of the things that's kind of taken the thunder from that announcement was that Haney's getting paid a reported $3 million. What do you think about that?
Good for him. $3 million. Good for him. This is an interesting fight because Jorge used to spar against Devin in Vegas. So they're familiar with each other. And we'll see how Jorge is now. A lot of people have counted him out. But I've seen a good contingent of people that are like, no, there's still a lot left of Jorge.
Right.
And a in shape, focused Jorge still beats a lot of people. So I think this will be interesting. I think this is really going to show us where Devin is.
Right.
And if he really is as good as he says he is, or he's facing, he is good, but he's just not there yet because Jorge is still what Jorge is when he's focused and 100%.
Right. And then, there's some people who are mentioning that Jorge Linares, is like, oh, well, he got beat by Pablo Cesar Cano, but that was at 140. So obviously him and his team knew like, okay, this isn't the weight class for me. This wasn't the right move. So they're going back down to 135. So obviously at 135,
but Haney's not a big puncher. Cano's a big puncher. Cano's a big guy. Haney's not a big knockout puncher. Like he has power, but he's not a knockout puncher.
Right. No, you're right. Which I think makes this fight a lot more intriguing as well. Because like you said, we saw what Cano did to Jorge Linares. It was just kind of like, it was kind of embarrassing to a point, just how Linares.
Surprising, that's for sure. Like no one was expecting that to happen, but all of Jorge's losses outside of the Lomachenko fight have been like weird things like that, where like he's winning and then all of a sudden he gets clonk, and it's just like, what the heck happened there?
Yeah. It's a very interesting.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, very interesting way how his career has turned out to be like that with his losses.
He's going to be a Hall of Famer though, for sure. Yeah. He's a Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer already for sure. But if he's able to get this win over Haney, I think that's like the last, I guess, push to like do something really great. Because if he loses to Devin, they're just going to use Jorge as a stepping stone as an opponent.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. But it is an intriguing fight. Hopefully, it delivers in the ring. So, and then, Haney, we'll see how he really measures up to somebody who's has a pedigree at 135. So we'll see how that goes. But Marcos, we thank you here at the Last Round Podcast. We thank you for jumping in and saving me as my guest co-host this week. Before we sign off here, go ahead and then let people know. Obviously, you're the founder of Fight Hub. You have Fight Hub TV on YouTube. But anything else you got on? I know we were talking about your podcast venture just before we started recording here. So before we let you go ahead and plug everything you got going, man.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you for that. Yeah. So obviously, like you mentioned, we have this little YouTube channel called Fight Hub. So if you guys aren't subscribed to it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on social media at Fight Hub TV. We're in the process, and we already have a few on there of transferring our video interviews into audio form. So our in-depth, unedited one-on-one interviews are now available on Apple, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's everywhere. It's wherever you could find a podcast, it's on there, because I made sure that stuff went through. So you can find us there. Just type in, Fight Up TV podcast, Fight Up podcast, and we'll come up. So yeah, man, that's been the latest. And, obviously, if you guys want to go ahead and give me a follow as well, personally, at Hey, it's Marcos V. I am still doing the unofficial scoring for the PBC on Fox shows. Nice, man. You definitely got a lot of experience in the boxing game. So we have a lot of people from across the pond in the UK who listen to our episodes. So I don't know how I know obviously the big YouTube channels over there, like Boxing Social, one of our partners, they're pretty solidified over there. But I'm sure you have a lot of UK fan bases over there too, based on your metrics and stuff like that. Love to get more.
Exactly.
You enjoy Boxing Social, and they do good work there.
Absolutely.
Fight Hub. Get the skinny on the American fighters.
Share the love, man. Share the love, right? But once again, special thanks to my co-host of this week for episode 120 of The Last Round, Marcos Villegas of Fight Hub TV. I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.